Yo, what's up? Welcome to Ruby Cinders. My name is Jimmy. I'm the co-owner, and this is another Freestyle, a show where basically I just ramble on about various topics off the top of my head. There's no script involved. There's really not much pre-planning, and these are going to be minimally edited. So Ruby Cinders is a shop here in Tallahassee that I co-own with my partner Joey, my business partner Joey. So we carry a lot of different merch from different, movies, music, TV shows, games, things like that, as well as products that we make as well. And so this show basically is like covers topics that are adjacent to the products that we sell. If you could like, share, and subscribe if you like the content that we're making, and if you could please support us by shopping at our stores. We have our physical location in Tallahassee, Florida. We have rubycinders.com. We have a store on Facebook and Instagram. And so yeah, help us out. Like this hat right here that we carry, and this shirt, Ursula, and this mug. But of course this mug isn't true. Everyone knows I'm gay. Speaking of which, it is June, and so since we are LGBTQ owned, I'm a gay man. My business partner Joey is not. He's a cis het guy, but he's definitely an ally. Obviously we wouldn't be best friends if he wasn't. And so we're going to talk about anything adjacent to our community in some way or another. Let's start off with Ursula. So The Little Mermaid isn't a LGBTQ movie. The character Ursula, however, was based on the drag queen Divine, who starred in a lot of John Waters' movies in the 70s and 80s. So if those people don't know, that's why Ursula looks the way she does. So future Jimmy will go ahead and put an image here of Divine so you can see side by side. So most of us in our community already know that, and allies as well. But anyone who didn't, that's why I'm wearing this shirt. And of course, this mug we sell as well as a couple other drinking vessels that are promote inclusion or is reflective of our communities. And in the links down below, you will see links to our stores as well. So that is definitely one right here that is coded, is I think the word. Although usually when people use the term like queer coded or something like that, it's generally the characters, mannerisms, or whatnot that is like, coded, as they call it, as our community. So like, back in the day when we couldn't be represented, a lot of the effeminate characters were, that's what they call queer coded, where, the gay characters. Unfortunately, for a long time, representation of our community was usually lampooned, or we were the villain. We didn't really start getting good representation until, I would say, the 80s and on, starting with shows like The Golden Girls, which we do carry merch of The Golden Girls. One, I'm a fan of the show, so our store reflects what we're fans of too. We don't carry stuff that we abhor or hate. So that would be hypocritical. We're not trying to make a buck off selling shit to just anybody. Our store is like an extension of our personalities. So The Golden Girls is a show that I loved as a kid, and also had episodes that represented us in a normal way. The plot lines tended to be about, issues that we were dealing with at the time, to kind of showcase to the straight world and the cis het world, I guess would be a better way to say it. The stuff that we go through, and also the fact that we're just regular people like everyone else. Who we love or how we identify doesn't make us a bad person. Now there are bad people everywhere. Cis, het, gay, trans, whatever. Some people are bad, some people are good. In the 80s is where we started seeing some sort of representation that wasn't just mocking us or painting us as some sort of villain. And the Golden Girls did that. So definitely kudos to them. Love that show. So y'all should check it out if you haven't seen it. But who the fuck hasn't seen something an episode or two of the Golden Girls. So that's one that showed represented us. Another one is Roseanne, that I am a huge fan of. Not so much the person anymore. She's turned into a right-wing nut job now, which is really sad to see, because I think a lot of that is due to her mental illness, because none of what she espouses makes any sense to the person that she was for the vast majority of her life. The show Roseanne, the sitcom, for its initial run, the first 9 seasons, was very inclusive. And it progressive in many ways, whether you agree with her politics at the time or not, it was. And that show, despite her flaws now, I think should be still celebrated for what it did, not just for our community, but for just talking about topics that just were taboo, but that every family went through and dealt with. Just normal everyday stuff like, you know, girls getting their period, birth control, and various other things. Also, racial issues, and then our community was shown. It was really just the gay community that was really talked about in that series. Unfortunately, still in the 80s and 90s, the trans community was still thrown under the bus as far as how they were represented. It really was gross. But it is what it is. At the time, that's how it was. I'm not making excuses for it, but the representation was terrible at the time. But Roseanne showcased gay people as just regular people, you know. They were just characters in the show. Their sexuality had minimal to do with the plot lines of what the characters were going through. Leon was one character played by Martin Mull, and Nancy was another character played by Sandra Bernhardt. Leon was a gay man. Sandra Bernhardt first came out as lesbian, but then you saw that she was actually bisexual. You know, there were certain plot lines of the characters that had to do with their sexuality, but plenty of other plot lines that didn't have anything to do with it. And that's what was really great about it, is that it wasn't like, hey, look, here's the gay character. Hey, look, here's the gay character. Gay, 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 gay. Everything about this character is gay. And it's the gay, gay, gay. No, they were just regular people, you know. And that's what I thought was really cool. At the time, I didn't see that kind of representation. So that was something that stood out when I was as a teen watching the show. Of course, I still was in the closet at the time and remained in it for several years after that. But it was still something that I think in retrospect did help me come to terms and accept myself, because we tend to, because of society, we have to come out to ourselves first, despite the fact that we've known all along our entire lives since we could think, you know, how we identified. But because of society shaming us, we have to first accept it to ourselves and tell ourselves, yeah, I'm gay, or yeah, I'm trans, and so on and so forth. And that show definitely was a part of it. Other representation in TV, I'm sure, also helped other people that I wasn't, you know, into, like Will and Grace. I wasn't really into that show. Unfortunately, to be honest, at the time, the character Jack annoyed me because of toxic masculinity. Of course, I found his feminism to be like not a good representation of gay people. And you know, because I'm not, you know, really effeminate in my mannerisms, but because of, you know, toxic masculinity, I was kind of, you know, it was kind of barreled into our heads as boys, you know, and young men, that those kind of mannerisms were bad. So even for like a gay person, I found it like, you know, ugh. But now, you know, looking back, it's like, no, some people are femme as fuck, and who gives a shit, you know? Some guys are masc as fuck, and who gives a shit? Everybody is how they are, and there's nothing wrong with it. But at the time, because of the way, society was, that was not looked upon as a good character trait. But there's nothing wrong with being a masculine man either, a traditionally masculine man. There's nothing wrong with that either. That's not toxic at all. So don't get it twisted. When I say the words toxic masculinity, I'm not talking about just traditional masculinity. It's the notion that all men must be that way is what's toxic. And there's a whole variety of other things as well that are that could make something toxic. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about shows and movies and stuff. Queer as Folk was another show that helped the cishet world see our community as people and showcase the struggles that we went through. That's definitely a show that I think an ally should watch if they're into dramas, of course. Of course, there's lots of nudity. So, if you don't like that, then don't watch it. That show was definitely a pioneer as well, that helped pave the way for stuff like the L Word and Noah's Ark. Because unfortunately, the thing with Queer as Folk is the representation was pretty cis and white, in its representation. They were all gay, of course, but there wasn't any trans representation much at all, and definitely all the characters were white. There wasn't much racial diversity in the main character plot points, unfortunately. That they ended up making a show called Noah's Ark, which is also a really good show, which is basically like a black version of Queer as Folk. Unfortunately, we don't have any merch of those shows because we just don't have access to it. But those are definitely shows you should watch. But we do carry Disney merch. And Disney was a early ally to our community. Of course, their motivations aren't necessarily altruistic. It's about money. They are a corporation after all. Don't get it twisted. Corporations that run around with the rainbow flag during June, it's just to capture our dollars. Now, I do like that we're represented. I don't think that they shouldn't do that. Enough backlash and they'll pull back, as we've seen in recent memory. But the fact that we are represented now more so is fantastic. And so Disney started with that despite the backlash they've always gotten for it. And they continue to be, they allow for gay days at Disney and stuff like that. And of course now are showcasing more characters who are, in our community in some way or another. Ren and Stimpy is another one that we have a hat of theirs, and that show is definitely the two titular characters are in our community. Stimpy is either bi or gay. I can't recall him being attracted to females in the show. But Ren is definitely attracted to females. But those two are fucking. Let's get it real. I mean, I know Spike TV, their version of it was like over the top and just in your face with it, which I thought was, in bad taste, because it was just butt sex jokes. Whereas in the Nickelodeon run, because it was a kid's show, it was coded, or it was innuendo that adults would get. So when I watched it as a kid, I didn't realize that they were actually a couple. I thought they were like, most other, duo cartoons where they're just best friends. And then when I went back and rewatched the episodes as a teen and as an adult, I was like, holy shit, like they're a couple, like for sure they are. So that show is great, and hilarious, and paved the way for a lot of style of humor like SpongeBob. When you see SpongeBob episodes and you see the close-ups of the detailed, like gross, close-ups, Ren and Stimpy started that. As most millennials will know that. Gen Z might not, but I'm not sure. And so moving away from just various content that is adjacent to what we carry, we're going to move towards other content that I think would be good for allies to consume and kind of get an idea of what it's like to walk on our shoes. So I mentioned Queer as Folk, of course, L Word, Noah's Ark, and I think the movie Get Real is a fantastic movie that should get more, you know, attention. I saw it as an adult in my early 20s, but I definitely connected with it because the movie's about a gay teen, a boy in England and in high school, being gay and coming to terms with that, and his struggle through high school. And it definitely, there's aspects of that that I connected with, you know, coming out. I didn't get bullied because I wasn't an overtly feminine guy. But I do know that at the time in the 90s, being out wasn't as well received. So I can sympathize with that, because I do know that kids were bullied for being gay. I was lucky enough, even though I didn't get bullied for being gay because I wasn't out, but even kids who were like effeminate were bullied, you know, for being gay, even if they might or might not have been. But thankfully, I was lucky, and then my LGBTQ friends as well weren't really bullied that I can tell when we were growing up. But it was something that, you know, we had to, you know, keep a secret. And so Get Real is definitely a great movie that I think is a good representation of what we go through. Which one else? Boys Don't Cry is another one that is a representation of someone in the trans community. It doesn't end well, so grab a box of tissues. But it's, I think, something that people should see, because that's what it was like. Obviously, Brokeback Mountain, for people who were in the boomer and greatest generation, I believe, because the characters, I think, they were adults in the 60s and 70s, if I'm not mistaken. So that those people would have been, I think, silent generation, not boomers. Boomers would have been kids or young adults. So it was still something that they had to struggle with. I think those three movies are good representations of what it was like being in our community in the past. So those are our more serious topics. Because unfortunately, the stuff that's lighter back then, we were just the butt of the joke for the most part, that I'm trying to think of off the top of my head. So other representations, I'm trying to think, that influenced me. There really wasn't much, unfortunately. And that wasn't just the butt of the joke, you know. There's really not a lot that I can think of. So if you can think of any from the past, from the 80s, 90s, 70s, that weren't just showcasing us as the butt of a joke or a villain, or even just a sad story. Of Philadelphia, there's another one that's sad. Leave them in the comments so that people can see good representations of us, and not just, you know, like I said. Because honestly, shit, I can't fucking think of others aside from Roseanne, the Golden Girls, Ren and Stimpy, Will and Grace. Let's see, Seinfeld. They did their show, the Outing, I believe is the name of the episode, which was one of the first episodes that dealt with straight men being accused of being gay when they weren't, and trying to say, no, I'm not gay, but without having some sort of aversion to it. Like in the past, Matt Baum on YouTube makes a good episode of his series. He covers gay pop culture of the past, and how back in the day, you know, it was like a serious aversion, you know, of if a straight man was considered, you know, gay or something like that. Like, oh my God, it's the fucking end of the world. Ah! You know, and that's how it was treated, as something disgusting or terrible or just life ruining, because at the time it was. And Seinfeld's episode, The Outing, flipped that on its head. They said, not that there's anything wrong with it. And at the time, that was very progressive, for its day. So despite, you know, what currently people are putting Jerry Seinfeld on blast for, which some of it is deserved, for real, let's just be real. But that episode was like celebrated in our community. Glad gave him props. They might have even given him an award. I'm not sure, because, you know, the two characters, Jerry and George, were accused of being gay, and they're not. And hey, let's keep it real. No one wants to be accused of something that they're not. I don't want people thinking I'm straight and saying, oh, you're straight. You know, I'm like, no, I'm not. You know, I'm a cisgendered gay man, and that's who I am. And don't tell me that I'm not. But also, there's nothing wrong with being gay. And they said that. And they did it in a comedic way. And I think that is part of that show's genius, when tackling certain topics. But in that specific episode, they dealt with, you know, how a straight man, you know, navigates being accused of being gay, because they're not this, you know, traditionally masculine. They're in their mid-30s and neat and not married, you know, and with kids. So there's these rumors, you know, Jerry Seinfeld, there were rumors of him of being gay because of him being single, even though he actually liked girls. That's one that I saw later. I didn't see as a kid, or as a teen, because that episode I think came out like 94 or 5, but I didn't start watching the show until my 20s in syndication. So that's another one that fairly represented us. And another episode in that one as well that I think fairly represented us, is the episode The Wig Master. So in The Wig Master, George Costanza, played by Jason Alexander, his fiance has a friend visiting. He's the wig master for the Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat or something like that. So anyway, the character is obviously gay. He's an effeminate man. You figure it is. He's not said that he is. You find out in the episode that he is, but you just assume it. And so what's funny is Jerry's character's plot line is that he's kind of pissed that he goes to a store with Elaine, and she's helping him pick out some clothing, and the sales representative or sales clerk starts hitting on Elaine, and he gets mad that why didn't he assume that they were together? Like, that's kind of rude, you know? And so he's like, he feels like emasculated in a way. He feels emasculated because like he's there with a woman, you know, and the guy's just hitting on her. They're not together, but he, you know, he gets a little thrown aback by it. So later on in the episode, he's hanging out with the Wigmaster guy. They're having champagne coolies, and they're sitting there, you know, hanging out, just two dudes talking. And a guy comes up and starts flirting with the Wigmaster, and right in front of Jerry. And he gets pissed in the same way that he gets pissed off for the sales rep hitting on Elaine when he was hanging out with her. Now this guy's hitting on the Wigmaster, and he's like, hey, are you hitting on him? He's like, yeah. And he's like, what makes you think that we're not together? Two guys hanging out, having champagne coolies? It's very emasculating. So it's fucking hilarious because it's not treating the gay character in any kind of disrespectful way. It's treating him the exact same way as you would treat anyone else. And the comedy of that, the joke in that isn't that the character's gay or that Seinfeld may be, you know, on a date with the guy. It's the fact that Jerry is being like disregarded right in front of him. Like, he's hanging out with another person, and he's just, whoever this fucking guy is, I'm going to hit on this person whether they're together or not. And that's what's funny. And so that show, I think, fairly represented us very well, despite the character of George actually being homophobic. I mean, the character is homophobic. He's constantly being afraid of being perceived as gay. And that's the joke. It's not that being gay is bad. It's that his perception of it being bad is the joke. So for whatever bullshit that people are putting, Seinfeld on blast for regarding his nonsense that he's been saying about wokeism and stuff like that, we have to look back at the show and see that, okay, things are a little bit more complicated. And we got to give Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David and that show Seinfeld its props for its day portraying our community in a regular and positive light. So I think that show is brilliant. It's one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. And I think, if you revisit it, you'll see that what they tackled at the time were what we would call woke now. So the fact that Jerry Seinfeld's bitching now is a little silly, but whatever. Cranky old man, I guess. So that's another show. I would say that represented us in the 90s in a fair light. Roseanne, the Golden Girls in the 80s. Let's see, what else? At least that I was exposed to. Yeah, unfortunately, there aren't many. And that's why it's so important that there's more now. Because it definitely helps. And as far as the mental health of the youth who are growing up, knowing who they are, but being told still by many people that they're damaged in some way when they're just not. So I guess that's about the size of it for now. So peace.